What makes the best booby-trapped grenade? This is educational, not instructional. On to the Afghan tulip. Now, before I show you what's in this cup, I think the last test we're gonna run is the least likely to work, but could be the most damaging with about double the firepower. Let's get on to the Afghan tulip. How was this thing introduced? Back in the 1980s, Russians were in Afghanistan and they would make booby traps by taking hand grenades, a dummy hand grenade in this instance, placing them inside of glass cups or mugs like so, and then placing them on top of doors inside of residential areas. This would mean that when the door was opened, this would fall onto the ground, which we're gonna test in a second, shattering, releasing the spoon, and allowing the grenade to detonate as it regularly would to the unsuspecting entrant. And there you have it, the Afghan tulip. That's actually incredibly effective. I would not want to encounter this in the wild. For test number 2, we have pressure-activated grenade booby traps. Now, these are perhaps the most basic, used all the way back in 1939, back in World War II, and used heavily in the Vietnam War. But as you can see, when you pull a pin on the grenade and you don't hold down the spoon, it goes flying off. So the most basic booby trap ever devised was to pull the pin on a grenade and find a fallen soldier or a dead body to depress that spoon. They would then place it under that person and wait for somebody to come and loot the body. It would be like, hey, this guy's got a really nice looking pocket watch, and then there you go. The trap has been sprung. Now, before we move on to those final 3 methods, I had 2 questions while I was preparing this video. Number 1, how much energy does a hand grenade really have? And number 2, what were the effects of using grenades as booby traps in war? To demonstrate the energy of a hand grenade, this is a 50 BMG rifle, and right here we have a gallon of water. I want you to see the recoil on my shoulder as I fire this thing. And then take a look at the energy on impact of that 1 gallon of water. So your average hand grenade is actually 42 times more powerful than a single round of 50 BMG. That's absolutely bonkers in my opinion. And as for the effects of booby-trapped grenades on the battlefield, number 1 is going to be psychological. It's absolutely terrifying knowing that these could be rigged up anywhere and that they could explode if you run into them, which is gonna slow people down a lot, but also make them very paranoid, which is never good for morale or critical thinking. Second is going to be area denial. This would prevent people from moving through an area freely, so it will slow them down, and they will have to clear these out because you can't just leave booby traps hanging around. And third is going to be actual real damage. Taking a look at that 50 BMG impact, it kind of shows us that the muzzle energy of a 50 BMG is extremely high, and yet this is 42 times more energetic. That's kind of crazy. So with those being the devastating effects of booby-trapped grenades on the battlefield, it's no wonder that they were used so much, which brings us to our 3rd test, the can grenade. This is a cool one, and it was originally used in Vietnam by the Viet Cong. Let me show you how they set these up. First, they would take a can like so and tape it to a branch or a tree. Next, they would grab a spool of nearly invisible fishing wire, and they actually would not tie it to the loop or the pin of the grenade. Instead, they would tie it to the body of the grenade. The next step is to place it inside of the can and run this to another tree and tie it off so that it's taut. Now, it was at this point, once their invisible wire had been laid, that they would come and pull out the pin. I happen to know this is a great idea because as I was setting this up, I knocked the grenade out like 3 times. All right, so we place it right there on the edge. Let's say I'm walking through the jungle and I'm just walking like so. The craziest part is when you trip on it, it actually pulls it closer towards your body, allowing it to enact even more damage. And now before we move on to the next method, a massive thank you from our sponsor, you guys. You're sponsoring this video just by watching it, so massive thank you. Make sure to like and subscribe. You guys are the best, and maybe one day we'll have some real sponsors in here. And for our 4th method that grenades were used as booby traps, we have the instant fuse method. This is where smoke grenades had their fuses removed, and then they were put inside of a hand grenade. This is a dummy, and you can see, because this isn't the normal contraption that you would see in an actual grenade, but they would replace that fuse, which is instant, rather than the timed fuse on a hand grenade. Now, the reason you don't want an instant fuse on a hand grenade that you're gonna be throwing is because if you pulled that pin and tossed that grenade, the moment that the spoon flies off and the striker hits the cap, this thing's gonna go kablooey. Not exactly what you want when it's incredibly close to you. But if you're gonna be leaving this for later, it made a lot of sense for people to swap out those fuses so that there was no chance for their opponents to duck and hide. This one was used all the way back by the Viet Cong as well, but it's even used today by both Russian and Ukrainian forces. And as for the safety pin you see in here, instead of a regular grenade pin, that was done because on a regular grenade, if you look very closely, there's actually two pieces of metal and they spread apart. This is spring steel. This means that it takes resistance to remove it, which is ideal when you only want to remove it on purpose. But if you look at this, this could be removed by a literal mouse. And not only is it incredibly light and easy to pull out because it's one piece of metal, it also has a perfect little loop right there to tie your tripwire strings, and that's why historically this has been a method of choice for replacing the pin in a booby trap scenario. So the more you know. Now for the moment you've been waiting for, the final method that was historically used. Now, I don't know how effective this is gonna be, and you're gonna see why in just a second. It required 2 grenades. They were secured to a branch or a tree, close together-ish, and they would actually tie the 2 pins together so that as somebody walked through, it would pull both of the pins out of each grenade, causing the detonation. We're gonna see if that's realistic. First, they would tape 1 grenade to a tree, like so, making sure that they kept the clothespin all locked up. Then they would run this nearly invisible wire all the way to the next tree, where they have a grenade set up in much the same manner. This is the point at which they would take those safety pins off. Then you undo the second one, as you can see. Now we do have them set up, but my personal theory as we test this is that it won't work because as you cross that line, it's gonna pull the pin out of one of the grenades, but not both of them. But I think that there would have been a fix for this. So let's test it out. I'm looking down because there's some barbed wire on the ground, and then I run, and here we go. We pulled 1 pin, but not the other. And the simple fix I bet they were bound to use if they want a double booby trap, just tie each of the pins with 2 wires running across and anchor them against the tree because the tree's not moving anywhere. So which of these 5 methods was historically the most dangerous? Well, I think 2. 1, placing the grenades underneath something that your enemy would want is gonna be incredibly damaging because it's really gonna make them think twice before they start rifling around. And second, I would say instant fuses used in any of these methods. So which historic booby trap method did I miss? And remember, if you drop a comment, I will reply. Don't forget to subscribe for more.